Time Prisoner, One Girl Lost in Ancient Egypt, Episode 3. Night had not fully lifted when Carol followed Memphis across the stone walkway leading toward the astrologer's observatory. The air was still cool, carrying the scent of damp papyrus and the faint sweetness of lotus blooms drifting from the palace pools. Torches burned along the corridor, their flames bending slightly with the occasional gust of desert wind. Carol's bare feet brushed softly against the cold floor, and she tightened her fingers around the linen shawl Nari had given her earlier. Memphis walked a step ahead of her, tall and silent. His white and gold robe moved with each stride, the gold threads catching small reflections of torchlight. He had not spoken much since the messenger interrupted their conversation on the balcony, but the tension in his shoulders told her enough. Something weighed on him. Something heavier than ordinary palace politics. When they reached the stone stair leading to the upper observatory, Memphis slowed and said quietly, "Stay close to me." His voice did not rise, yet it carried more force than the torches around them. Carol nodded. "I will." The observatory sat high above the courtyard, open to the sky on all sides. As they stepped inside, the astrologer, a thin older man with deeply lined skin and sharp eyes, stood near a wide stone table covered in star charts, ink pots, and small bronze instruments. He bowed immediately when Memphis approached. "My Pharaoh," the astrologer said, voice steady but heavy, "what I saw tonight was not a simple sign. It was an alignment we have waited generations to witness." "Tell me exactly what you saw," Memphis said. The astrologer lifted one of the charts and laid it flat on the table. The parchment crackled softly beneath his fingers. At the moment the moon reached its peak, one star in the southern sky brightened beyond its natural intensity. A second star responded, shifting ever so slightly, as if drawn to it. They formed an angle associated with ancient prophecy. Carol listened closely, her pulse tightening. "What does it mean?" The astrologer looked at her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing, not out of hostility but out of calculation, as if studying something that had not existed in any of his charts. "It means," he said slowly, "that fate has been disturbed." The words hung in the air like dust floating through sunlight. Memphis stepped closer to the table. "Explain." "This alignment," the astrologer continued, "only appears when something enters our time that does not belong to it. Something that shifts the path of a kingdom." Carol felt her stomach drop. Her hand pressed against the side of her dress, grounding herself. The astrologer pointed to the chart. "One star represents a ruler. The other represents the arrival of something foreign. Something the heavens have not recorded before." He turned to Memphis. The ruler's star moved. A silence cut through the room. "What are you saying?" Memphis asked. "That your destiny," the astrologer replied, "has changed its course." Carol's breath caught. She looked at Memphis, expecting anger, fear, denial. But his expression remained unreadable, though his jaw tightened just enough for her to notice. "And what of her?" Memphis asked, his voice lower. The astrologer glanced at Carol again. His gaze was not unkind, but it carried the cold clarity of someone who had studied the heavens for too long. "She is the disturbance," he said. "The sky recognized her before we did." Carol took a step back, heart pounding. "I did not choose this. I did not come here to change anything." "Yet you have," the astrologer said gently. "The stars only move for forces strong enough to touch fate." Memphis turned toward Carol, and for the first time since they had met, she saw something shift in his eyes, a brief flicker of something she could not name. Not fear. Not anger. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Before anyone could speak again, footsteps echoed at the entrance of the observatory. A guard rushed inside, bowed, and said, "My Pharaoh, Lady Ankes requests to see you immediately. She insists the matter concerns the foreign woman." Carol felt the cold air wrap around her spine. Memphis exhaled slowly, controlled. "Of course she does." The guard bowed again and retreated. The astrologer lowered his voice. "My Pharaoh, the palace will not remain calm. The moment word spreads of this alignment, every faction will sharpen its intentions. Memphis placed a hand on the table, steadying himself. Then he looked directly at Carol. "You must stay where I can see you," he said. "Whatever brought you here is not finished." Carol swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Memphis stepped closer, just a fraction, but close enough that Carol felt the warmth of his presence. "We face it," he said. "Together. But even." As he spoke, the wind shifted through the open observatory, carrying with it a sense of something vast and unseen, the kind of feeling that told her the night was only beginning. Carol followed Memphis down the spiral stairs of the observatory, her fingers brushing the cool stone as she tried to steady her breath. The sky was softening into early dawn, the deep blue lifting into pale grey. The palace below was already stirring, guards changing posts, servants whispering in groups, their eyes following every movement she made. It felt different today. Heavier. As if the entire kingdom had awakened with one question on their lips. Memphis walked ahead, his steps controlled but firm, the long white and gold folds of his robe trailing behind him. His silence worried her more than any threat. Last night, he had been tense. This morning, he was unreadable. When they reached the lower corridor, Lady Ankes stood waiting for them. She did not need to raise her voice. Her presence alone filled the narrow hallway. Tall, poised, wrapped in a white linen gown embroidered with gold, her long braids framed her sharp features like dark wings. The torches threw a cold glow across her face, highlighting every calculated line of her expression. "Brother," Ankes said, inclining her head politely, though her eyes never left Carol. "I hear the astrologer kept you occupied well into the night." Memphis did not respond right away. Instead, he stepped subtly forward, placing himself half a step in front of Carol. "What do you want, Ankes?" "I want the truth," she replied. "The palace is whispering about the alignment last night." Guards rushed through the courtyard like the sky had fallen. "And now I learn that she," her gaze sliced toward Carol, "was present when the astrologer made his declaration." Carol felt her heartbeat quicken. "I was only listening." "Exactly," Ankes said softly. "You listen. You watch. You appear from nowhere. And now the heavens react. You must understand why this concerns me." Carol swallowed. "I understand why it concerns everyone." Memphis's voice deepened. "Ankes, enough." But Ankes stepped closer. The gold ornaments in her braids clicked softly with each movement, a sound like small warning bells. Carol kept her chin still, refusing to shrink away beneath that sharp gaze. "The court council will demand an explanation," Ankes said. "They will gather today. They will ask about the alignment, and they will ask about her. If you do not control the narrative, they will." Memphis's jaw tightened. "I will handle the council." A faint smile touched Ankes's lips. "You cannot control every voice, Memphis. Not when a possible omen appears tied to a foreign woman with no recorded origin." Carol felt the sting in the words, not cruel, but precise. Exactly where it would hurt. Memphis stepped forward fully now. "She is under my protection." "That is what troubles me," Ankes answered quietly. "Your protection makes her a target. And it makes you vulnerable." Her eyes finally softened, not toward Carol, but toward her brother. "You may not see it yet," she continued, "but the factions inside this palace are already dividing." Memphis stiffened. "Who dares? Do not pretend you did not anticipate this," she said. "Half of the inner court believes the alignment confirms she is a threat. The other half believes she is a sign the gods are shifting their favor. Both sides will act." Memphis fell silent, and that silence said everything. Ankes straightened her gown. "The council will meet at midday. You must decide how you present her, before they decide for you." She turned gracefully and walked away, her footsteps echoing like deliberate punctuation. When she disappeared around the corner, Memphis exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight that had been pressing on him since the night sky changed. Carol touched his arm lightly. "Is she right?" Are people truly dividing because of me? His eyes met hers, dark, steady, filled with something she still could not fully interpret. You did not choose this, Memphis said, but yes. They are dividing. What happens if the council decides I am a threat? I will not allow that. But, I said, Memphis repeated, more quietly but with far more force, I will not allow that. Carol's breath eased, just a little. He looked away for a moment, as if choosing his next words carefully. The council is not only dangerous because of tradition, he said. It is dangerous because each man at that table has his own ambition. His own alliances. His own fears. He started walking again, and she followed. They will not attack you openly, he continued. Not yet. They will begin with questions. Doubts. Traps hidden in polite words. Then tell me how to answer, Carol said. I will not embarrass you. Memphis stopped, turning fully toward her. Dawnlight spilled over his shoulders, outlining him in pale gold. You do not need to protect me, he said. You only need to survive today. Her breath caught. And you? He held her gaze for several seconds. I will be where I must be. The palace corridor grew brighter with the rising sun, but the atmosphere around them felt heavier with each passing minute, like the day was a tightening bowstring, waiting to snap. Somewhere deep inside the palace, a horn sounded, calling the council to assemble. Carol flinched. Memphis looked toward the sound, then back at her. It begins, he said. And together, they walked toward the hall that would decide what the kingdom believed she truly was. The council chamber was already full when Carol and Memphis stepped through the tall carved doorway. A long stone table stretched across the center of the room, lined with officials in white linen robes marked by black and gold stripes. Their voices dropped the moment she appeared. Not a single face tried to hide its curiosity or its suspicion. Sunlight streamed through the high, narrow windows, creating sharp beams across the floor. Dust hung in the air, drifting like suspended thoughts. Carol felt each stare cling to her as if she were a question no one wanted to answer but everyone wanted to ask. Memphis moved slightly ahead of her, forcing a path with nothing more than his presence. His shoulders remained square, his steps deliberate, his robe flowing like white fire behind him. Carol stayed close, feeling the weight of the chamber tighten around her. At the far end of the table sat the High Counselor, an older man with deep-set eyes and a trimmed grey beard. His fingers tapped softly on the stone surface as he observed her approach. "Welcome, Pharaoh," he said. His voice was polite, but stiff. "And welcome to the woman of the alignment." Carol felt a knot form in her stomach. Memphis did not bow. "Her name is Carol." A soft murmur rippled across the council, quickly suppressed. The High Counselor nodded once, not committing to approval or disagreement. "Then let us begin." Memphis gestured for Carol to stand beside him. She did, her heartbeat steady but loud in her ears. "Before we proceed," Memphis said, "I will state this clearly. Carol will not be questioned alone. Any inquiry you wish to make, you will make it in my presence." The High Counselor folded his hands, masking his reaction. "Very well." He turned to Carol. "Where do you claim to be from?" The question was expected, yet hearing it in this chamber, beneath the scrutiny of every watching eye, made the answer feel heavier. "I am from a place far from here," Carol said carefully. "A place you would not know. A place beyond these lands." "A foreign kingdom?" one councilman asked. "Beyond any kingdom you have mapped," she said softly. Another councilman leaned forward. "And yet you understand our language." Carol hesitated. "I did not, at first. But something changed. Something helped me." She could feel the astrologer's words from the night before echoing. The stars recognized her. That answer stirred the room. A few scribes exchanged glances. Others whispered behind their hands. And this alignment, a different official pressed, appeared the very night she arrived in our world. "Yes, the astrologer said, stepping from the shadows along the chamber wall. I witnessed it myself. The council collectively turned toward him. The astrologer spoke with a calm authority. The stars reacted to her presence. That is irrefutable. One councilman frowned deeply. If the heavens react, then perhaps she is not merely foreign. Perhaps she is a warning. Memphis shifted his stance. You speak boldly. Too boldly. I speak of caution, the councilman replied. Is it not suspicious that fate moves only when she enters our world? This kingdom has stood for generations. With her, the sky changes. Carol felt coldness push up her spine, but she lifted her chin slightly, refusing to shrink behind Memphis. I did not choose to come here, she said. I am trying to understand this place just as you are trying to understand me. An older counselor narrowed his eyes. If you did not choose to come, then who chose it for you? And for what purpose? The question stabbed the room into silence. Carol opened her mouth, but no answer formed. She knew nothing. No logic, no proof. Only fragments of what she remembered before waking in ancient sand. Memphis stepped forward, breaking the tension. Her purpose is not yours to decide. It must be, the High Counselor countered, if her existence alters the fate of the throne. That statement hit the chamber like a blow. Memphis's jaw tightened, but Carol saw something else flicker beneath his composure, a quiet awareness that the counselor was not exaggerating. Everyone here had heard the astrologer's words. Her arrival had already shifted the stars representing the Pharaoh. What do you propose? Memphis asked, voice steady but edged with warning. The High Counselor folded his hands. We propose to evaluate the woman's place within the palace. If she is harmless, she may remain. But if she carries danger, intentional or not, we must act. Carol felt her pulse throb. And what does your evaluation mean? It means we observe you, the counselor replied. We watch your movements, your behavior, your influence. And we judge if the gods have delivered a blessing or a curse. Memphis's eyes darkened. No man in this room will lay a hand on her. No one suggested harm, the High Counselor said smoothly. Only judgment. You do not get to judge fate, Memphis replied. Someone must, the counselor answered. The wind outside struck the tall windows, sending a harsh breath across the chamber. The room seemed to tighten around Carol, as if the walls were leaning inward. Memphis finally spoke again, lower but more dangerous. She stays under my protection. That is my decision. And the council, the High Counselor said, reserves the right to question that decision. Carol felt Memphis's tension radiate like heat. He was holding himself back, restraining the part of him that reacted with force rather than words. The astrologer stepped forward again. The alignment has only just begun. The sky will shift further in the coming nights. If you wish for clarity, you must read every sign before taking action. The counselors looked at each other nervously. Memphis seized the moment. Then we wait. The High Counselor exhaled slowly, realizing he could press no further today. Very well, he said. But understand this, Pharaoh. The kingdom watches you. And it watches her. His gaze fell directly on Carol. She felt it like a blade. The council began to disperse, robes rustling like feathers, voices low and tense. When the room finally emptied, Memphis turned to Carol. Are you all right? He asked. I do not know, she admitted. You handled them better than most born to this palace, he said. Carol let out a fragile breath. What did they mean? About judging me? Memphis paused. They will test you, he said. Some gently. Some not. Carol looked down, fingers tightening around the hem of her linen dress. So this is only the beginning. Memphis nodded once. Yes. He reached out, slowly, as if unsure whether he should, and touched her arm just above the elbow. But you will not face it alone. The touch lasted only a moment, but its warmth lingered long after he withdrew his hand. Outside the chamber, slow, ominous drum beats began echoing through the hallways, signals used only during times of political tension. Carol looked toward the doorway. "What does that mean?" Memphis stared ahead, his expression sharpening. "It means the palace has started choosing sides." The drumbeats grew louder as Carol and Memphis stepped out of the council chamber, traveling through the wide stone corridors like a pulse running through the palace. Servants moved quickly, their heads lowered but their eyes flicking upward whenever Carol passed. Guards tightened their formations near the entrances. The air felt charged, as if the entire palace sensed something shifting beneath its foundations. Memphis walked with quiet intensity, each stride measured, each breath controlled. Carol followed close beside him, feeling the weight of the morning pressing heavier against her chest. She had survived the council, but something told her the real test was just beginning. When they reached the inner balcony overlooking the training courtyard, Memphis stopped. Below them, soldiers formed coordinated lines, shields and spears catching the rising sun. Their movements were sharp, unified, but the atmosphere, not the drills, pulled Carol's attention. There was fear among them. And anticipation. Carol stepped forward. "Why are they training like this so early?" Memphis leaned his hands against the stone railing, his expression darkening. "Because when the palace is uncertain, the borders must be prepared." "You think the council will spread panic?" "The council does not need to," Memphis replied. "Rumor travels faster than any decree." Carol felt the truth of that settle in her stomach. The whispers about her had already begun last night. She could only imagine what they sounded like after this morning's confrontation. Memphis looked down at the soldiers, his gaze sharp. "This is what I feared. A kingdom reacts to what it believes, even if the belief is built on fear." Carol watched the drill line shift formation, spears rising skyward in perfect synchronization. The harsh clatter echoed upward, bouncing off the stone walls. "Will they blame me for this?" she asked softly. Memphis straightened and turned toward her. "Some will. Because it is easier to blame a single woman than to accept uncertainty." Carol looked away. "Then what should I do?" "Stay close to those who do not fear you," Memphis said. "That number may be small, but it is not zero." A chill brushed across her arms. The courtyard below opened into a passage where palace runners waited for orders, their feet tapping restlessly on the tiles. Something was being prepared. Something larger than the council. Before she could ask further, a guard approached from behind and bowed to Memphis. "My Pharaoh. A messenger arrived minutes ago. News from the southern border." Memphis's posture stiffened. "What news?" The guard hesitated. "Foreign scouts have been sighted. They crossed too close to our patrol lines." Carol felt the air still. Memphis's jaw hardened. "Which kingdom?" "The report suggests Hittite clothing, though the scouts were not captured." Carol's breath caught. She did not know much of ancient politics, but the name sounded familiar, spoken in the palace occasionally with tension. Memphis nodded to the guard. "Send the messenger to my council room. And tell the captain of the guard I want a full patrol rotation within the hour." The guard bowed and left. Carol turned to Memphis. "The Hittites, are they enemies?" "Not officially," Memphis said. "But they play their game with precision. If they send scouts, they want to see something." "See what?" "Whether the rumors of a foreign woman are true." Carol's heart dropped. "You think they know about me?" "If the palace knows by dawn, foreign spies will know by noon." She stepped back, the weight of it pressing into her ribs. "I did not ask to be a threat." "You are not a threat," Memphis said immediately. "But power does not care what you intend. It cares what you represent." Carol rubbed her hands together, trying to ground herself against the rising fear. "What do I represent then?" "To them?" "To you?" Memphis took a long moment before answering. "To the council, you represent disruption. To the astrologer, you represent prophecy. To our enemies, his voice grew colder. You represent advantage. Carol swallowed hard. And to you? Memphis met her eyes directly. To me, he said slowly, you represent a decision I must make before anyone else makes it for me. The honesty in his tone made her chest feel tight. Not romantic, not soft, just real. Heavy. Binding. Before either of them could speak again, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. They turned. To see astrologer approaching, his robe slightly disheveled, his breath uneven. My Pharaoh, he said, bowing. The alignment, it shifted again. Memphis stiffened. Explain. The astrologer opened a small scroll. His hands trembled slightly. The ruler star moved farther than expected. And the foreign star, hers, brightened a second time. Carol felt cold down to her bones. Memphis stepped forward. What does that mean? The astrologer's voice dropped. It means the threads of fate are tangling faster. Something is coming. Something soon. Carol's pulse hammered. The astrologer looked at her with an intensity that made the corridor feel smaller. If the stars continue at this pace, the next shift will not be subtle. It will shake the kingdom. Memphis inhaled slowly, the dawn light sharpening across his face. When? By nightfall, the astrologer whispered. Perhaps sooner. A long silence hung between them. Below, a horn sounded in the courtyard, short, sharp, urgent. Memphis stared toward the sound, eyes narrowing. That is the signal for internal alert. What does that mean? Carol asked. It means, Memphis said quietly, the palace has stopped whispering. It is preparing to act. Carol felt dread deepen inside her. And you, she asked. Memphis looked at her, the intensity of his gaze enough to steady and frighten her at the same time. I will act first. And with that, he turned sharply and walked toward the war chamber, leaving Carol standing on the balcony as the palace below slid into organized chaos, soldiers moving like a single massive organism responding to a threat that had not yet shown its face. But the sky had shown its sign. And it was